this is demonic. This is clearly demonic. People send it to me and I go, okay, because I'm, for the most part, off social media.
And if we found 6 men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files.
Jeffrey Epstein was texting with congressional delegate Stacey Plaskett while she was sitting in a congressional hearing with President Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen in 2019.
And Business Secretary and Labour MP leaked sensitive UK government tax plans to the convicted defender.
Epstein repeatedly sought a meeting or back-channel communications with President Vladimir Putin, at times suggesting he had advice or insight.
More than 300 names connected. All his money is now being exposed.
What is going on
Okay.
here? New documents show Justice Department documents mention Russia thousands of times and Vladimir Putin over 1,000 times, reflecting extensive Russia-related communications and contacts in Epstein's network. Emails, travel records indicate, okay, so there's real something to it. Epstein made multiple trips to Russia, obtained business visas, had scouts there recruiting young Russian women for him, of course. Similar to his operations elsewhere, the files describe Epstein cultivating ties with Russian political and business elites, acting as a facilitator in deals and introductions, not just sexual encounters. Epstein repeatedly sought a meeting or back-channel communications with President Vladimir Putin, at times suggesting he had advice or insight to offer about dealing with Donald Trump. He had documented ties to at least one former Russian official with a background in the FSB, whom he used to gather information on a woman he claimed was trying to extort his business partners.
The Department of Justice released it to Jeffrey Epstein were revealed in the latest batch of the Epstein files, and Joe Rogan revealed 10 names that had been previously redacted. In this video, we're going to look at details of what went on inside Jeffrey Epstein and his
was
private
simply
plane,
a wealthy
along with his
financier
connection to
who
foreign
happened
governments,
to be deeply
and how
disturbed,
he made more than 3
someone who
million pages of
exploited
records,
his money and
around
influence
2,000
to live out
videos,
private
and about
crimes behind closed
180,000
doors.
images from various
That narrative
investigations
began
tied to
to
Epstein.
collapse the
However,
moment the
most
latest
of these
batch
files
of
had
Epstein
been
files
completely
was
redacted,
released.
with entire sections
Millions
blacked
of
out.
pages,
The
thousands
DOJ
of
claimed
videos,
that this was done
and
to protect the
hundreds of
victims.
thousands of
But if
images
that's true, then
suddenly
why are
became
names of
part of the public
co-conspirators
record.
also blacked out?
But instead of clarity,
Hours after
what
the release
people
of these
saw
files,
was darkness.
sources
Entire
online managed to
pages
unredact
blacked
the
out,
files
names
and expose
erased,
not just the names of the
timelines
people involved,
fragmented.
but also the
The
videos
Department
and
of
images
Justice
hidden in
claimed
the
the
files.
redactions were to protect
That
victims.
mentioned someone
Yet
thanking
the
Jeffrey
documents
Epstein for
also
sending them an
concealed
illegal
the
video.
identities of
The name of
powerful
the sender was
associates,
redacted,
people
but
with
now
no
this name
reason
has
to be
finally been
shielded
revealed
if
in
justice
Sultan
were the real
Ahmed bin
goal.
Sulayem, the
Online
70-year-old
researchers
head of the
quickly
global
noticed
logistics
something
giant
unsettling.
Dubai Port World.
Within hours,
Gotta talk
independent
about Sultan
analysts
Ahmed
were
bin
able to
Sulayem,
recover names the
resigned
government
as
claimed had
CEO
to
of
remain
DP
hidden.
World. This is
That
Dubai's
alone
largest
raised a
port
terrifying
operator.
question.
Doesn't help.
If
Revealed that this
civilians
was
could
sent to
expose
assault him.
buried information
Sultan
so
Ahmed bin
quickly,
Sulayem lost
how
both
much
his
more
roles
was
as chairman
being
of the board
intentionally
and
concealed?
CEO of the company.
The files
After being
didn't
mentioned
just
several
suggest
thousand times in
negligence
the
or
millions of pages
incompetence,
of records
they
on the
suggested
defender
control.
Jeffrey Epstein.
And once
At
people
one point,
began
Epstein even
connecting the
called him his
dots,
most
it
trusted
became
friend.
clear that Epstein
Emails
wasn't
included in the
operating
release
in
also show
isolation.
that Epstein
He was
introduced
embedded
Sulayem
in a
to
system
various
that
international-
extended
Just don't
far
think
beyond
we
one
really knew
island,
until we
one
saw
plane,
those
or
files
one
come
criminal
out.
case.
And then you
And
go,
that
oh,
realization
there's no
completely
denying that.
changed
My
how this
position on
story
is
had to be
completely
told.
I thought there's probably some really sick people that have an appetite for that, but I hadn't seen any real evidence for it until these files. And now they're like, oh, this is demonic. This is clearly demonic. People send it to me and I go, okay, because I'm, for the most part, off social media. But every now and then someone will send me something that I have to look at. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And these are emails back and forth. There's one of them where Epstein says, I enjoyed the Twitter video. There's these references to pizza, a lot of references to pizza that are 100% some kind of a code.
Yeah.
And then it brings you back to Pizzagate.
Yeah.
Joe talked about an email.
When you have this email, June 2013, from Epstein to bin Sulayem, all I know for sure is that you're one of my most trusted friends in every sense of the word. You have never let me down, not once, not half of once, and I greatly appreciate the time we spend together. This was the response. Thank you, my friend. I am off the sample, a fresh 100% female Russian at my yacht. Epstein responds, 100% Russian or 100% female? Question, if it were once a man and now has, and describes women's private parts, what percentage is it? And bin Sulayem responds, 100% female. Yeah, the messages between the two discuss women, girls, explicit content, business dealings for sure, meetings with world leaders, yeah, and then the video. Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the video. Epstein apparently sent that message in April 2009 to a redacted name, but then you had Representative Thomas Massey, who's been all over the
Prince
As
of Wales,
investigators
a tour of
dug
BP
deeper
World's
into
London
the
Gateway
files,
port in
one pattern
2016.
kept appearing
This
over
isn't the
and
first
over
time
again.
that his name was mentioned in
Russia.
connection to Epstein
Thousands
either.
of references,
Just last week,
repeated
Sulayem was
mentions,
also accused by
travel
two
records
U.S.
and
lawmakers,
communications
Ro
tied
Khanna
Epstein
and Thomas
to Russian
Massey,
officials,
of being
business
one of
figures,
6
and
figures from
recruitment
politics
networks.
and business.
He
And that
traveled there
Sulayem gave the
multiple times,
Several
obtained
high-profile
business
political
visas,
figures had
and
documented
reportedly
contact
used
with him over
scouts
the
to
years,
recruit young
attending
women,
events,
mirroring
appearing in
operations
flight
he
logs,
ran in
or
other
socializing
countries.
in elite circles.
But what truly
All of
stood
this
out were
happened after
repeated
Epstein's
attempts by
2009
Epstein
criminal
to establish
conviction, and it
back-channel
raises several
communications
questions about
with
how
Vladimir
a man
Putin
convicted of
himself.
crimes against children
In
managed to
some
move
messages,
so comfortably
Epstein
among
implied
lawmakers,
he had
billionaires,
insight or
and global
strategic advice
influencers.
related
Court
to Donald
documents
Trump,
and deposition transcripts
positioning
show
himself
that
as a
Epstein cultivated
geopolitical
relationships
intermediary
strategically.
rather than a
He
simple
donated to political
financier.
campaigns. He hosted
The
private
files
dinners
describe
and
him
positioned himself
cultivating
as a
relationships
financier
with
connections
individuals
that
linked
could
to
make
Russian
or break your
intelligence
campaign.
backgrounds,
One of the
using
politicians
them
that
to
Joe
gather
Rogan talked about
information
was Stacey
and solve
Plaskett,
disputes
and her
for his
conduct
partners.
would make you question
This wasn't
just
about
how much control
socializing
Epstein
or
had over the
indulgence.
U.S. government.
It was about leverage,
Powerful men
influence,
who were associated
access.
with the disgraced financier.
Epstein appeared to
Congressman
understand
Massey
that
and I went to
information
the
was
Department of
currency,
Justice
and
to
he
read
moved
the
through
unredacted
international
Epstein
power
files.
structures
We
as
spent
someone
about
who
2
knew
hours
exactly
there,
what people
and we
feared
learned
becoming
that
public.
70 to 80%
And if Russia was
of the
willing to
files
engage
are
with him,
still
the question
redacted.
became unavoidable.
In fact,
who else was?
There were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massey and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake. And now they have revealed the identity
Speaker,
of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nikola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. Now, my question is, why did it take Thomas Massey and me going to the Justice Department to get these 6 men's identities to become public? And if we found 6 men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files.
Epstein's reach went into the farthest areas of the American government, too.
Yeah. Right, because like I would imagine you would want them too. There's plenty of women politicians you'd want to compromise. I mean, they did get Stacey Plaskett. She was cooperating with Epstein, going back and forth during Trump's administration. So if people wind up going to trial over this and people wind up getting indicted over this, that could get more interesting, because then you remove it from Minnesota and then it becomes this federal court thing. And so then it becomes mainstream public news if they do this correctly. But if there is something there.
Jeffrey Epstein was texting with congressional delegate Stacey Plaskett while she was sitting in a congressional hearing with President Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen in 2019.
Did they reach out to you to talk with you about these payments?
No, ma'am.
And documents recently released by the House Oversight Committee now show that Plaskett, a delegate of the Virgin Islands, and Epstein, a resident of the Virgin Islands, were coordinating in real time Plaskett's questioning of Trump's former fixer during the hearing. At 2:24 p.m., Epstein texts, Cohen brought up Rona, keeper of the secrets. Plaskett responds, Rona? Quick, I'm up next. Is that an acronym? Epstein replies, that's his assistant. About 7 minutes later, Plaskett asked Cohen about Trump's assistant.
Is Miss Rona, what is Miss Rona's position?
Rona Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant.
And would she be able to corroborate many of the statements that you've made here?
Yes, her office is directly next to his, and she's involved in a lot that went on.
Though her name was redacted in the documents, the Washington Post first reported that the timestamps line up with Plaskett's questioning in the hearing. Plaskett, who was a non-voting delegate, faced a vote to censure her after the text came to light, but it ultimately failed. Plaskett has defended her text with Epstein, saying that she took texts and calls from many of her constituents.
I've been a prosecutor for many years. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein had information, and I was going to get information to get at the truth. Having a friendship with him is not something that I would deem to have.
That question
And it
grew
wasn't
louder
just the U.S.
when
government
lawmakers
or the
forced
Saudi
the
royal
Department
family
of
that
Justice
Epstein
to
was
admit
connected
that
to.
6
Emails
powerful
show
men
that both the
had been
British royal
intentionally
family and
hidden from the
high-ranking
files.
politicians within the
It
UK
took less than
government
2
were
hours of
working with
review
Epstein,
by members
and
of
at times
Congress
even
to
revealing trade
uncover
secrets
what had
with him.
supposedly
The files show
required
that
mass
Prince Andrew was at
redactions to
Epstein's
protect.
island. And flight
These
logs
weren't
prove he went
obscure
there multiple
figures.
times.
They were
Among the
billionaires,
correspondence, there is also an
international
invitation for
executives,
Epstein to
and
dine at
individuals
Buckingham
with
Palace.
influence
Epstein's
over ports,
offer to introduce
finance,
Mountbatten
and global
Windsor
trade.
to a 16-year-old
One
Russian
name
girl.
appeared repeatedly
And photos that
across
appeared to show
emails,
Mountbatten
logs,
Windsor
and
kneeling over
internal
an unidentified
references.
woman lying
Someone
on the floor.
Epstein openly
Finally,
called
in the
one of
early
his most
2000s,
trusted friends.
Virginia Giuffre,
Messages
a woman from
between
the
them
UK,
contained
claimed that
coded
she had been
language,
tracked by
references
Epstein
to
and Maxwell,
videos,
and
and
forced to have
disturbing
sexual relations
implications
with Andrew on
disguised as
3
jokes.
occasions.
When
Starting
these
when she was
names were
just 17.
finally revealed,
As for the
careers
UK government,
collapsed
well,
almost
they are
instantly.
equally as bad.
Resignations
Peter Mandelson,
followed.
the former
Boards
EU Trade
removed
Commissioner,
executives.
was heavily
Yet
implicated.
even then, the revelation
Latest release
felt
of Epstein
incomplete.
files uncovered
If
photos
6
of
men
Mr.
could be
Mandelson with no
uncovered so
trousers on
quickly,
with an
how
anonymous
many
woman,
more remained
and also
buried
revealed that
inside
then Business
millions of
Secretary
pages,
and Labour
still
MP
hidden
leaked
from public
sensitive
view?
UK government tax
The
plans to the
implication was
convicted
chilling.
defender,
The
and
system
advised
wasn't
him
broken.
to
It was
mildly
functioning
threaten the
exactly
Treasury
as designed,
over proposed banker's
releasing
bonus
only
tax,
what pressure
as well as
forced
telling the
into the
disgraced
open.
financier that he
Epstein's
was trying
influence
hard
didn't stop
to
at
change the
foreign
policy
governments
from
or
within
global
at Epstein's
corporations.
request.
It extended
The
directly
documents
into
also
the
show
heart of
multiple
American
payments
politics.
of thousands of pounds from
Documents
Epstein
revealed
to
that
former Labour
Epstein
spin
was
doctor
texting
or
a
his
sitting
husband,
congressional
one of which
delegate
was
in real
after
time
Epstein's
while she was
2008
participating in an
conviction
official
for
hearing
as young as
involving
14
President
for
Trump's former lawyer.
In a statement last
Time-stamped
night, Peter
messages showed
Mandelson said he
Epstein
felt
feeding
regretful
her
and
information
sorry about
and
the
clarifying
movements to
names
Epstein,
moments
adding
before she asked
allegations which I
questions on
believe
the
to be
record.
false that he made
This wasn't
financial payments to me
speculation.
20
The
years
timing
ago,
matched
and of which I
perfectly.
have no record
When
or
the messages
recollection,
surfaced,
need
the defense
investigating
was
by
simple.
me. While doing
Constituent
this, I do not wish
communication.
to cause further
But the
embarrassment to the Labour
explanation
Party,
raised more
and I am
questions
therefore
than it
stepping
answered.
down from membership
Why
of the
was a
party.
convicted
He also
offender
repeated a previous
coordinating with a
apology to the
lawmaker
women and girls
during a
impacted
live
by
government
Epstein's
proceeding?
crimes.
Why did his guidance
The UK,
directly
the
shape
US,
questioning
the
in a
Saudis,
federal hearing?
3 of the most powerful
Even
entities
after
on the
public
global
exposure,
stage were all being
attempts
controlled
to
by one
formally
person.
censure the
The
delegate
fact that he
failed.
had access to these
No
elites
charges
is
were
insane.
filed.
And according
No
to several sources
investigation
online,
escalated.
Epstein's
The
positioning
message
indicates
was
that he was an
unmistakable.
intelligence asset,
Epstein
and Joe
didn't
Rogan
need
believes
formal
this too.
authority.
Royal
He
families
operated
don't
through
socialize with
proximity,
random financiers
pressure, and
unless someone they
information.
trust is vouching
Tools
for them.
far
Let me
more
just get real
effective
and
than
say-
official
If I gun to your
power.
head, what do you think your best assessment of what Epstein, who was Epstein, who was he working for?
Well, I don't know, right? So I'm just guessing. Everybody wants to say he was working for the Mossad. He very well could have been. He could have been working for the CIA. He could have been a guy who was on his own, but also working with them, right? Like a guy that they used, but they never fully endorsed.
Like an asset?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a guy who could move money around.
Right.
He definitely...
Good at laundering money.
The moving money around stuff was very weird because he had money through no way that anybody could ever explain.
Yeah.
He had an enormous amount of money through no way that nobody could ever explain. Which, you know, if you're state-funded, you're funded by Israel, and Israel's funded by America, and, you know, there's also NGOs and nonprofits, and there's ways to move money around where you can give this guy money.
Yeah.
So he was like... Weinstein, who is an economist, right? Weinstein's a legitimate mathematician.
Eric?
Yeah. So when Eric met him, his first inclination was he was a fraud.
He's a construct.
Yeah, a construct. And did he tell you the whole story about the girl sitting on his lap?
Yep.
So Epstein, while he's meeting with Eric Weinstein for the first time, has a beautiful girl sitting on his lap, and a woman, I shouldn't say girl. He said she was like in her 20s. Yeah. And she's sitting on his lap, and he's bouncing around, so they're juggling around.
While he's asking math questions.
Yeah, talking serious. So he was obviously nerd fishing. He was fishing for nerds, and I think he caught a lot of nerds in that net. There's a lot of those
100%.
guys that wound up going to that island. They probably thought, this is great. We get to party.
Another name connected to Epstein is Bill Gates.
Across the Atlantic,
in one of his
the
emails,
revelations
Epstein wrote that
grew
he had
even
helped
darker.
Mr. Gates acquire
The files
drugs
linked
in order to
Epstein
deal
to
with
British
consequences
royalty,
of sex.
with
Russian
flight
girls,
logs confirming
and that he had
multiple
facilitated
visits
trysts for
and
Mr. Gates with
correspondence
married women.
indicating
In
invitations
another
to
email,
elite venues
Mr. Epstein
normally
blasted
inaccessible
Mr.
to
Gates
outsiders.
for choosing to
Photos,
disregard and discard our
testimonies,
friendship
and
developed
allegations
over 6 years.
resurfaced
He
involving
accused Mr.
underage
Gates of abandoning him
individuals
in
and
order to
figures
preserve
at
his
the highest
reputation.
levels of society.
And that's what the crazy thing about the
At the
Epstein
same
leaks
time,
today.
UK government
one
officials
email
were shown
And we're
exchanging
here.
sensitive economic and
Proven
policy
disgruntled
information with
liar
Epstein,
are absolutely
including
absurd
trade
and completely
strategies
false.
and tax
The only
plans.
thing these documents
Payments
demonstrate is
flowed
Epstein's
even after his
frustration
conviction,
that he did not
blurring
have an
the line
ongoing
between
relationship with
negligence
Gates,
and
and the
complicity.
lengths he would go to entrap
When the
and
exposure
defame.
became
British
impossible
and
to
U.S.
ignore,
government officials were
resignations
providing financial
followed.
support to Epstein,
Statements of
and
regret
public
were
records
issued.
show that Epstein
Apologies
managed money
were
for
made,
wealthy clients
but no real
and cultivated
accountability
relationships with
arrived.
high-profile
The
individuals
pattern
across
repeated.
the U.S. and
Distance
UK.
the institution,
One of the most obvious
sacrifice
signs that
individuals,
Wexner is being
preserve
pressured to
the
stay
structure.
quiet just happened.
Epstein's
A lawyer,
value to
Les
these
Wexner,
systems
was caught on a
appeared to
hot mic
outweigh the
telling
moral
him to keep
cost
his
of
answers to
association,
questions about his
even
relationship
after
with
his
Jeffrey
crimes
Epstein
were known.
short.
I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
Yes, because I wanted to see who this man was. And I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards. So, you know, my heart breaks for these young women because that's how I felt. And here I'm an older woman. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It's awful.
She's happy she's no longer married to Bill Gates. She's happy to be away from the muck, as she put it. And we've just seen this interview with Bill Gates on Channel 9.
It's factually true that I was only at dinners. You know, I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, you know, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
There we go. I never met any women. Wow, this is getting curiouser and curiouser, Esther.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately for Bill Gates, now he has to probably deal with the insinuation, at least for many people, that Melinda chose to divorce him and get herself out of that world. Also because of his association or his tenuous links, which he denies, with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, the allegation that he presumably got an STD from a Russian prostitute that was associated with Jeffrey Epstein was actually written in a note by Jeffrey Epstein to himself.
It said that Bill Gates wanted to get from him antibiotics to give to Melinda because he got syphilis or he got something.
Damn.
The clap, chlamydia, whatever he got. He got some sort of an STD from a prostitute.
Do you think if she could have the choice between getting what did she get, $50 billion, or not getting the syphilis, which would she
whatever
take?
she got. I bet it wasn't syphilis. It was probably the clap. It was probably chlamydia or something like that.
That's no big deal.
But if who knows if that's true, though? Here's the thing. Like, Epstein clearly was some sort of a blackmailer. And this is an email that Epstein wrote. So it could be complete fiction. Epstein could have wrote that just to put pressure on Bill Gates for some business deal. Like, who knows? He could have spread rumors and then said that he'll squash those rumors. But these guys are dealing in deception and blackmail. And so you can't, like, assume that it's true.
A representative of Gates said these claims from one of these wealthy elites was Lex Wexner.
Billionaire Les Wexner, one of the closest known benefactors of Jeffrey Epstein, says he was, quote, naive, foolish, and gullible for trusting the late convicted offender. The 88-year-old testified before members of the House Oversight Committee in a closed-door deposition yesterday. He previously led the former parent company, Victoria's Secret, and hired Epstein to manage his money in the mid-1980s. In his prepared opening statement, Wexner said he cut ties with Epstein shortly after his arrest in late 2006, but the latest release of Epstein files show the two stayed in touch past then. In her book, Selling Sexy, Victoria's Secret and the Unraveling of an American Icon, CBS News contributor and Puck fashion correspondent Lauren Sherman discusses Wexner's years-long relationship with Epstein, and Lauren joins us now. So tell us more about their relationship.
So Epstein was advising Wexner since the early 80s. He was introduced to him by the guys at Bear Stearns. He was vetted by him. He was a casual advisor. And then by the early 1990s, Wexner actually granted him power of attorney, which we all know is a very rare thing to do with a financial advisor. And he had that until 2007 when all these accusations and Epstein started to get into really big trouble. Wexner has tried to remove himself from the Epstein narrative, but the reality is he made Epstein very rich. And so the two men have been intertwined and have affected Wexner's legacy as an entrepreneur and a person who really built a lot of Ohio over the last 40 years.
Then there was I hired a lady to be like the house manager who had run the U.S. Embassy in Rome, and she said, yeah, I know how to do this. And I said, well, why don't we keep inventories of stuff? And she said, well, yeah, I could do that. So she did that. That's kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done. Answer the question. Okay.
As we peel back,
One
I
of
will
the most
kill you
unsettling
if you answer
aspects
another
of the
question
Epstein
with more than
story
5
has
words.
always been his
Okay,
money.
the layers of this
No
mystery.
one could clearly
we see that
explain
somehow
how he
everything was
became
tied
so
together.
wealthy.
Even the banks
He
were working
managed
together
funds
with
for
Epstein.
billionaires,
The top
yet
lawyer
lacked the
at Goldman
credentials
Sachs,
of a
Kathy
traditional
Rumler,
financial
announced this
powerhouse.
week that she will
One
resign
elite
following
retail
leaked
magnate
emails that
granted
show her
him
links
power
to
of
Jeffrey
attorney,
Epstein.
an almost
Rumler's
unheard of level
resignation
of
comes
trust.
after the United States
Even
Department
after
of
Epstein's
Justice's
legal
latest
troubles
release
began,
of investigative
records
files
showed
about Epstein
continued
showed that she had
communication
received
and
gifts from the
financial
disgraced
overlap.
financier,
When questions
offered him
arose,
advice on managing
silence
his
followed.
reputation,
In
and
one
likened him to an
particularly
older
revealing
brother.
moment, a lawyer
Somehow,
was caught
Epstein was linked to
instructing his
everyone from the
client to
governments to the
limit
banks
answers
and
to
even the
5
billionaires.
words during a congressional
And then his
deposition.
control over to
Not
Joe
because
Rogan.
the truth was
In a recent
complicated,
episode of his
but
show,
because it
Joe
was
Rogan
dangerous.
revealed that back in
Epstein's wealth
2017,
wasn't
one
just
of his
off
guests,
screen.
Lawrence
It
Krauss,
was
a
inside.
theoretical
Guess
physicist,
what? She resigned.
tried to invite
Yeah,
him
these
to
two
Jeffrey
apparently
Epstein.
suggested
According to the
backing
Wall
Emails
Street
of the
Journal,
exchange
Epstein
soon went
more
viral.
powerful than
In one of the
private
emails
investors
between
alone.
Jeffrey Epstein and
The
Krauss,
reach of
Jeffrey
Epstein's
Epstein was
network
trying to get an
extended
interview
into
with
the
Rogan.
tech world
He
as
said he
well.
thought
See, the
Rogan
issue
was
there is
Emails
she
surfaced
seemed to indicate
referencing Bill
that his
Gates,
wild,
relationship
like
containing
Jeffrey
claims that
Epstein was
Epstein
Arthur?
had facilitated
I saw you did
personal
the Joe Rogan
matters
show.
and
Can you
attempted to
introduce me?
Totally
maintain
tricked out by
leverage
Uncle
long
Jeffrey
after
today.
Gates
reached out,
Jeffrey
but
Booth
Rogan
just
wasn't
handbag and
interested.
watch.
Epstein
Gates
followed up with,
denied the
if he
allegations
wants,
outright,
Rogan can have
calling
dinner
them
with Woody
fabrications
Allen
from
from
a
Reddit.
disgruntled
Krauss
criminal.
later replied,
And yet,
sorry about Rogan so
emails
far.
revealed a familiar
More timid than I would have thought.
Epstein
I'm in the
documented.
files.
May 2015, Epstein writes, if Redacted continues to claim that she had sex with people for money, why is that not prostitution and what I pled guilty to? Every massage person got paid money. No girl came to the house to learn math. Did sex for money change the equation? There was a massage person per day. Some turned out to be younger than others, some as old as 60. I'll explain when I see you. Rumler seems to respond, I think the point is that if she was underage, she cannot legally consent to engaging in prostitution. They would also discuss politics and Donald Trump, or even calling Trump at one point truly stupid. There's this interesting email in 2016 regarding Bill Clinton, where Epstein writes, my memory is a friend. I stopped talking to Clinton when he swore with wholehearted conviction to me that he had done something. He had forgotten that he also swore the exact opposite to me only weeks before. Speaking of Clinton, by the way, there's this one where Epstein writes, do you think Bill Clinton would like to join you, me, Ehud, and Steve? Could be very funny, all off the record.
Not going.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm in the files for not going because Jeffrey Epstein was trying to meet with me.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, and I was like, what?
I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Aren't
I
you
was like,
glad?
Yeah, but I would have never went anyway. It's like, it's not even a possibility that I would ever went.
But
especially after I Googled him. I was like, what the f are you talking about? This was like 2017. One of my guests was trying to get me to meet him. I was like, you high? Like, what the f are you talking about?
For what reason would you? What would be...
If I was a guy who was like sucking up to the rich and powerful, if I was really interested in hanging out with rich and powerful people.
You know, it's crazy. That's so crazy. But yeah, some people
get intoxicated by being in a circle of rich and powerful people, even if they're not, like, they don't even have any ambitions of being one of those people. They just want to be around them. They want to be around Nobel Prize winners. And because this guy what he was doing was very clever in that he was getting all of these very powerful and very respected people together.
Yeah.
And you would figure like, oh, it's
if that guy's there, if that lady's
Clinton's
there.
here. This is fine. Clinton's here. How could this be bad?
Yeah.
Look, it's Steven Pinker. How could this be bad?
Yeah.
You know, he's a genius. Like, and so you would go, I would imagine, you would go to these, because like, there's people that went to these, like, he had parties in New York, like, he brought in celebrities and comedians. Didn't Louis Black get invited to one of those? I think he's talked about it. I know Chelsea Handler went to one of them. It's like he would bring all these people in, and he'd like to be around famous people and entertainers and a lot of intellectuals and professors. And Noam Chomsky was famously deeply involved.
The only reason Joe said no to Epstein was because
a decade ago, and I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. I was like, what are you saying? There's an island, like, it sounds like a plot in a movie. There's an island where they fly famous rich scientists and politicians, and they compromise them with underage girls and get it on film so they could use it against them. I'm like, what? That sounds like lizard people. It sounds like, you know, 5G creates COVID, same thing.
Yeah.
But turns out it was true. And it's one of many things. He was the first one to warn me about a social credit score system. He's like, they're going to try to implement a social credit score system, and your money is going to be tied. They'll have centralized digital currency, and your money will be tied to your social credit score system, and you step out of line, you won't be able to buy things. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to do anything. They're going to try to keep you within a 15-minute radius of your home, and they're starting to do that in it's so tangled. You know, the whole thing is just, I think everybody who looks at it realizes this is a rabbit hole that just goes to the center of the earth. And there's so many people involved in that. Here's the big question that people ask. If there was a Jeffrey Epstein, and it seems like all these things he was involved in, is there a Jeffrey Epstein right now that we don't know about?
There's a million of them.
A million of them.
I mean, this is why I find this, you know, this is not the core of what I focus on. But I find it a really interesting field of
somehow
study.
Alex Jones knew what was happening on
so many
island, and his private plan
US
decades
government
before his
institutions and the
conviction.
relationships
Epstein
between
may
government
not have been
and
working
At this
alone,
point, it's hard to
or even
separate
for
the truth
himself.
from the rumors.
Jeffrey
Everything
Epstein
people thought was
publicly
impossible a few
questioned whether
years ago
Epstein
is now
functioned
being
as an
proven true.
intelligence
All of the
asset
elites are working
used,
together in a
respectfully
protected,
professional
and
fixers.
eventually
Jeffrey
discarded.
Epstein ran a
He may
criminal
have served
operation
multiple
to
interests
maintain
at once,
relationships with powerful
operating in
individuals
gray
across
zones between
politics,
governments,
business, and
corporations,
academia.
and
Not
Court
private
really
documents and
influence
within
investigations
a
have
particular
confirmed his
experts
crimes,
describe
but so
figures
far,
like
no
Epstein
action
as
has been
professional
but in the
Joe
kind of
Rogan
sticky layer
predicted that
between
in
them
the
that
coming
connects
days,
them all.
we'll see
specifically
even
to
more
connect power
conspiracy theories
centers
being proven
while
true.
absorbing the risk.
But the
Epstein
questions
fit that
surrounding his
description
network and
perfectly.
influence are far
He
from
moved
settled.
money without
The public isn't
explanation.
asking for
He
speculation.
accessed people
They're
without
asking for
clearance.
transparency
He
and full
survived
disclosure.
exposure that
If
would
you
have
believe the
ended
truth should
anyone
come out,
else.
make sure to
And
like
even
this
after
video,
his death,
subscribe to the channel, and share it so the conversation keeps growing. Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for what comes next.